current tax season that's already been in operation, basically since late January. It's very, very unusual because with all of the changes from tax legislation from last year's, and you recognize, the one big beautiful bill that was passed back on July 4th of 2025. Yes, ever since then, there's been so many improvements in this tax structure, particularly and mostly and positively affecting the middle class and the lower income brackets of the filing population. So the with so many changes that have been taking place, the prediction at that time was that there was no way that tax filing season would just start at as usual and not have any change in schedule. But that's was not the case. The IRS really did a tremendous job in adapting all of those news from the one big beautiful bill, and we're able to do it, um, and despite all of the computer updates and changes that had to be made. So we'll start off. I want to remind you, as usual, that this station is very, very supportive of local efforts, particularly those of a group of 9 and 10-year-old baseball players who have really made a mark in the competitive annals of Southern California. They have been playing since really 2023, and have made a real impact on the locals, you might say. The It's actually for as I say, 9 and 10-year-old boys, and it's a travel baseball team. They have they call themselves the Riverside United Baseball Club. It's operated by Jason and Cicely Wooten, Wooten, and they're looking for support. Their phone number, 951-534-3838. That's 951-534-3838. And they just participated in a out-of-state tournament in Arizona, and lost, when they were in the finals, by just one run. They are hoping to get support from folks just like you, to pay for some of the many expenses when they go on the road. And so, they're not just looking for financial handouts. They won't accept those assistance, but they're looking for things that might be purchased, like, for example, matching baseball cleats, helmets, team jerseys, batting gloves, matching, and most important, matching equipment bags. So, folks, please keep them in your hearts, and give them a call. And as I was mentioning earlier, give them a call at 951-534-3838. Easy phone number. Okay, folks, the tax reporting season is here, and we look forward to your questions, and we look forward to your comments. And please contact me at 951-534-3838. 951-522-9877 for email enthusiasts. It's evjtax1 at gmail.com. That's evjtax1 at gmail.com, and we'll try to repeat those numbers before the end of the this hour. Before we get into the nitty gritty details of filing your tax return, a couple of articles to keep us in touch with what are some of the major issues. And I would say certainly one of the major issues is the budget and what is actually making it difficult to manage the budget. Of course, the major issue just recently has been the Medi-Cal, what they call the Medi-Cal money drain. An article that was just published from the Inland Empire Sun, San Bernardino's Sun, in the opinion section by Susan Shelley, who's a columnist who's quite frequently presented in this newspaper. But it's called, her article is called The Medi-Cal Money Pit. Now, if you're wondering just why there are all kinds of tax increases, particularly in California, and this does really apply to California, but I'm sure there are common incidences of this similar activity in the other 49 states. But Susan Shelley asked the question, if you're wondering just why there are all of these tax increases, that are coming soon to a ballot nearby, one reason, of course, is Medi-Cal spending. In California right now, how many folks are on Medi-Cal? 14.5 million folks are on the Medi-Cal program, which is Medi-Cal is just another name for Medicaid, but it's called Medi-Cal because it's in California. But it's the safety net for the health insurance program for low-income folks. As of October, that included 1.7 million folks who have what the government calls unsatisfactory immigration status. A new report from the Legislative Analyst's Office warns that Medi-Cal spending has more than doubled over the past 10 years, even faster than the growth in the overall state budget. In 2026, 27, the budget estimates that Medi-Cal is going to cost $222 billion with a B, of which 49 billion comes out of the state general fund. A big chunk of the rest of the funding comes from provider taxes. What are provider taxes? Well, these are taxes and fees that are actually paid by managed care organizations, hospitals, and other the actual providers of health care. Then when the state gives that money back to these same entities to pay for Medi-Cal services, the federal government then reimburses the state for 50% or more of those payments. The higher the taxes on Medi-Cal providers, the more money California can, quote, draw down in federal dollars. The federal government had rules intended to prevent gaming the system, such as the requirement for uniformity. And that meant the states, could not tax Medicaid providers only, or tax them at a higher rate than the private providers. Well, they were given, there were all these waivers and clever structures that some states exploited to collect extra money. Um, you know, and the they did this, willingly and with full compliance. Actually, the United States law prohibits the use of federal tax dollars to provide more than a limited form of Medicaid to this so-called expansion population. However, the states did not escape the federal government's notice. Some of the state money came from federal reimburses of tax-boosted Medi-Cal expenses. So last July, the president, really, made a huge dent, in the use of these Medi-Cal funds, and so we will, really attempt to keep you posted on all of those increases in Medi-Cal spending, which technically violate the law if they're used for folks who are not citizens, of the country. So but this has been an ongoing issue, and of course, this has been, one of the main reasons that we had the budget shutdown. That actually wound up closing the doors of the federal government. And we just recently set some records, on those budget shutdowns. The length of time that that it actually occurred. In late January, the federal government's Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS, they released a final rule that the agency said would end the state's ability to exploit the healthcare-related tax loophole. And that loophole is currently used by many states to generate billions in federal Medicaid payments without even contributing their state's fair share or even expanding care for Medicaid and enrollees. So so that's HR 1 requires Medicaid recipients between the ages of 19 and 64, with a lot of exceptions, to prove that they've spent at least 80 hours per month working, studying, or volunteering. Now, the requirement takes effect this next year in 2027. In California, state officials have predicted that 1.4 million Medi-Cal enrollees will lose their coverage as a result of those work requirements. The new law requires some Medi-Cal enrollees, that is, working age adults without kids, to have their eligibility redetermined every 6 months instead of every year. The Legislative Analyst's Office estimates that the work and renewal requirements together could mean 2.1 fewer people on Medi-Cal by 2028. So there's been a lot of changes in that area, but it's amazing that here we are, really still have not reached a settlement between the two parties on the hope for extension of the subsidies. And as you know, those subsidies We wound up at the end of last year without the subsidies to the Obamacare Act, Obamacare coverage. Now that never took place. So there's a lot of people out there who are really feeling the pinch of higher premiums, and that just shot up after the subsidies did not get extended. Okay, folks, let's take a quick, time out, so to speak, and look at the and renew the reminder about the other uh, time bomb that's up there that is going to blow up in our face in a few years. And there's an article that was published in the Washington Examiner, um, and it was entitled Tiana's Take. The name of the author is Tiana Lowe Dorcher, Doescher. She's an economics columnist for the Washington Examiner. But Tiana's Take was dated February 11th, and the title of her article, The Real Population Bomb is About to Come. Social Security, what is that? That's the Social Security looming bankruptcy. Throughout, President Trump's second non-consecutive term, there are all kinds of pundits across the political spectrum that have been warning that the economy is really on the cup of a mass job losses, and they've cited everything from downward pressure on the labor market, from tariffs to Trump's orders for the Federal Reserve. But the nation really has hit a dangerous economic inflection point because this long predicted future demographic crisis will really not be that we just have too many people for too few jobs, it's often warned about, but rather there's just too few people will be available to work at all. The birth, the drop in the birth rate is one of the major issues. And that's causing a collapse in marriage rates. While fertility among married women has held roughly constant over the last 3 decades, it really has fallen off among unmarried women. And because fewer young people are getting married, the overall fertility rate has crumbled. This means that whereas the annual rate of the population's natural increase due to births minus deaths, that was steady until the end of the baby boom, until the beginning of the 21st century, and then it began a precipitous decline around the Great Recession. Right now, the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimated that Americans, the death rate will outpace births by 2030. So there'll be more deaths than births, meaning that absent any immigration, the population will begin to shrink in 4 years. The even accounting for CBO's immigration assumptions, the number of seniors 65 or older is slated really to really skyrocket, and we have an increasing rate of retirees aging into socialized healthcare and other types of worker-funded welfare. But the big issue is the diminishing rate of young people being born and raised into the labor force. Congress will try to kick the can down the road by raiding the Disability Insurance Trust Fund, but even that would only buy the retirement program another 2 years before reaching insolvency at the very start of 2034. And then it would necessitate a 26% cut in benefits. Social Security is not going broke just because Congress broke into some non-existent lockbox. Rather, the program was always designed as what you might say a Ponzi scheme. This was fine in 1940 when 159 workers only had to shave pennies off their paychecks to fund one beneficiary. It was even theoretically okay when over 3 workers funded each beneficiary from the 1970s to the start of the century. So at one time, as I say, we had 3 workers, actual workers, that were funding each beneficiary. But really, it has become a catastrophe as the birth rate has collapsed over the last 20 years. The only good news is that even though Congress and the rest of the gerontocracy have deluded themselves into believing that Social Security can really be saved, when it really comes to this matter, that the children are all actually right. Last December, a Cato Institute poll did a poll by YouGov, YOU, then GOV. They found that only a third of Generation Z folks believed that Social Security would still exist when they retire. And wisely, those under age 30 seem keen to let the program put itself out of its misery rather than further indebted the nation to save it. Nearly half of Generation Z supported immediately cutting Social Security to fund the chasm that will come with insolvency in 6 years. And 60%, folks, oppose raising payroll taxes to maintain scheduled benefits. The wealthiest generation have created a federal deficit designed to compound its liabilities on autopilot and left it to the smallest generation in a century. The real population was never just the non-existent risk of too many people, but rather a lonely labor force burdened with a federal balance sheet that they will never be able to repay. So we'll try to keep you up to date on how Social Security is dealing with their oncoming bankruptcy. So since we're in the middle of the tax season, if you made a mistake on your tax return, there was an article that I thought would be of interest to the listening public, and it's called, "Well, you made a mistake on your tax return. Should you amend it?" Well, in common life, to retract an error, even in the beginning, is no easy task. This was one of statements of one of the first Treasury secretaries, Ron Chernow, Chernow. He was the nation's first Treasury secretary. What he was writing about, income tax bloopers, his words undoubtedly will resonate with millions of modern-day taxpayers. Nobody likes to admit mistakes, especially complexities to the nation's tax systems. Millions of taxpayers each year face thorny questions about how and even whether to fix their errors and their omissions, particularly omissions of income. The tax advisors say some clients have a fear that filing an amended return is tantamount to waving a red flag in front of the auditors, just tempting them to question every line that you've submitted. They would rather play the audit lottery and pray that they just won't get caught. Other folks worry that trying to correct even relatively small errors will be too much for IRS's antiquated computer systems to handle and could create even more problems. So, what do we do? Well, that depends on the details of each case. Really, it depends on the size, the type, and the number and the reasons for the errors. The process may appear just relatively simple, but appearances can be deceiving, even in cases involving honest mistakes or just new data. What might seem to be a simple change can ripple through the entire tax return and affect a lot of the return. Even so, most taxpayers should not be afraid at all to file an amended return. The reasons for making amendments are really do really do um, um, cover the waterfront. Examples include forgetting to report a dividend or interest payment, or neglecting to take advantage of various tax credits or deductions, or receiving new incomes that they didn't have when they filed their original return. So, what may be the right answer for one taxpayer could be the wrong answer for another taxpayer. So, just a question: how many people typically file amended returns? Well, a IRS spokesman, Eric Smith, mentioned that there are actually about 3.7 million amended returns that get filed on Form 1040X, and that was about just over 3.5 million amended returns in the fiscal year that ended in September, and ended on September 30th of 2015. Can I file an amended return electronically? No, you have to file the old-fashioned paper way. If you're, if you file an amended return electronically. How quickly does IRS handle amended returns? Well, not very quickly. Amended returns really take up to 16 weeks to process and up to 3 weeks from the date of filing to show up in the system. So, keep that in mind. During the tax season. Another question: should taxpayers bother filing or fixing routine math errors? Well, IRS says it may correct mathematical or ethical errors on a return and may accept returns without certain required forms or schedule. Really, in such case, there's no need to amend your return. But IRS does say do file an amended return when there's a change in your filing status, a change in your income, or change in your deductions or credits. So again, there's the situations that do require you to file an amended return when you change your filing status, change your income, deductions, or credits. Okay, suppose I want to fix mistakes on tax returns for more than 1 year. Well, can I do it all on one form, 1040X? The answer is no. You have to file a separate 1040X for each year. IRS wants you to mail each form in a separate envelope. Also, don't forget to check out any state filing requirements. IRS does want to remind you to include the year of the return that you're amending at the top of the 1040X. Another question that has come up: can I file just if I fix just one error and just ignore all my other mistakes? The answer is no. If you file an amended return, you really must correct all of your known mistakes. You can't just cherry pick what you want to fix. Another question: are questions required? Are taxpayers required by law to file amended returns with the IRS to fix errors? Well, the answer is no, according to a tax lawyer, Brian Scarlatos, who's a tax lawyer at the Castellans, and I can't pronounce his last name. It is Castellanets Fink LLP law firm in New York City. Millions of people do anyway because they want to get it right with IRS, and because they hope that filing their amended returns and paying any balance dues will enable them to avoid stiff penalties. Others who amend returns may qualify for a hefty refund or a credit. Okay, another question that has come in is how far back in time can I go to claim a refund or a credit on my federal return? Well, generally, you must file your 1040X within 3 years. That includes extensions. You have to file within 3 years after the date that you filed your original return, or within 2 years after the date that you actually paid the tax. So the that's important, and that's to repeat again. Generally, you have to file the 1040X within 3 years after the date you filed your original return, or within 2 years after the date that you actually paid the tax, whichever is later. But there are some exceptions. The time limit can be suspended for some people who are physically or mentally unable to manage their financial affairs. Another exception: an amended return based on bad debts or worthless securities generally have to be filed within 7 years after the due date of the return for the year in which the debt or security became worthless. Okay, a couple more questions that have come in. What should I do if I want to come clean on something that could be construed as civil fraud or even criminal wrongdoing? Also, what if my return is already being audited? Well, this can be very tricky, but it's far too complex to delve into, in short notice. Remember that an amended return is an admission that your prior return was wrong. Some lawyers say taxpayers shouldn't file an amended return if they're already involved in a face-to-face IRS audit involving that return. In such cases, it usually makes much more sense to speak to the agent about the issue rather than just filing the Form 1040X. And lastly, will my chances of getting audited increase if I file an amended return? Well, probably yes, several tax advisors say. One IRS spokesman says he isn't aware of any statistics, on the subject. So, if you this little reminder about a mistake, this tax reporter will be happy to report, those instances in which you should actually come about and come forth and just amend the return. So the I'll be glad to repeat that if you take part in the program by calling in your questions and asking us to repeat something that has been mentioned once, and asking us to repeat it again, for clarity. So the it's really it's really good to stay abreast of those things. The Because you could save yourself a ton of money, tax wise, if you do that. The it would be helpful. I've been told that the for you to be mindful of things that increase your income. Uh, that yeah, maybe they might increase your income in the short run, but they also might disqualify you from new tax breaks or reduce the value. To make sure that you're eligible for all of these new deductions, over the under the one big beautiful bill that got passed last July 4th, make sure that you're eligible for them. You might need to do some fancy footwork before you file or before the end of each year, and uh, and make sure that you bring your income within the necessary thresholds, or just move quickly to take it full advantage. One of the signature provisions of the One Big Beautiful Bill is the new senior tax deductions of $6,000 for single taxpayers of 65 years of age or older, or married filing joint filers who um, get if you're married, they get a deduction, a standard deduction of $12,000. That's on top of the standard deduction, which is 15,750 for singles, or 31,500 for married couples filing joint this year. And there's an existing senior tax deductions of $1,600 per person. Added together, older married couples filing jointly, they could get total deductions of somewhere around $46,000. Um, and the bonus is you can claim that new tax break whether or not you itemize. And again, you can claim this new senior deduction whether or not you itemize. Keep in mind, though, that not all older taxpayers will qualify. The new deduction actually does phase out for single filers with a modified adjusted gross income of $75,000, or if you're married filing joint for $150,000. And it disappears once you've hit modified adjusted gross income of 175,000 for singles and 250,000 for couples. The expanded state and local tax deduction, it's it had been raised. Um, it has been raised, and for 2025, for the current tax year, that expanded state and local tax deductions, they call it the SALT deductions, that has been raised for the current filing tax year of 2025. It's been raised up to $40,000, and that's compared to just $10,000 for last year. But it does phase out. That has a phase out amount too that you got to be aware of. The full SALT deduction, state and local tax deduction on the Schedule A, that includes state income taxes, property taxes, sales taxes. That phases out it has a phase out, and I'd say contact your tax preparer to find out what that phase out might be. So, if you're still working, increasing your pre-tax contributions to retirement plans and health savings accounts can help, particularly those who are employees with 401k plans. And keep in mind that for 2025, that the max that you can use to reduce your taxable income. That max is all the way up to $23,500. So if you're contributing to your 401k plan, but not really contributing to the maximum, you really should be taking advantage of if you can afford it. You maybe you can postpone a bonus until next year, or maybe you can prepay your deductible first quarter 2026 property taxes in 2025, if allowed. Uh, avoid moves that inadvertently increase your income enough to disqualify you or reduce the value of these tax breaks. Be cautious with Roth conversions. You know the Roth rationale for doing a Roth conversion is more complicated. This year. So be be aware of that account. The Unfortunately, the energy credits are gone. They really did. They ended on December 31st of last year. That's if you didn't take advantage of by the December 31st, that is actually install the tax, install the energy efficient home improvement and residential upgrades. If you didn't actually get them installed by the end of last year, too bad you can't use. You can't use those to generate a energy credit for 2025. So, what are some of the other steps that you could take? Since we do have a good deal of time, at least just under 9 months, before the end of this 2026 year. But some steps that you might consider for taking for 2026. Once you've finished your year-end planning, set yourself up for 2026 with these new moves. The number one, I would say, adjustment that actually comes across my desk is the need to adjust your withholding, recalculating your estimated tax payments. The start of the year is always a good time to just revisit just how much tax is taken out of your paycheck. Is it sufficient? You can also deduct taxes on when you get Social Security benefits. There's a nice big spot on the Social Security 1099 form to show each year how much you've actually had withheld out of your Social Security benefits, or even your IRA withdrawals, to be used toward paying your current year's income tax bill. But it's become especially important for 2026. The retirees can change their Social Security withholding by getting a hold of them at the website ssa.gov/my account. You can reset your retirement account contributions, to get a head start on your tax liabilities for 2026. And then, of course, always guard against fraud. The fraud indicators are awfully high during tax filing season. Consumers lost more than $12.5 billion to fraud in 2024, up 25% from 2023. Fraud losses are likely to keep rising following the recent exposure of Social Security data. That included the personal information of hundreds of millions of Americans, including their Social Security numbers addresses, and birth dates. To protect yourself, put a free credit freeze on your accounts via the three major credit reporting uh, agencies. Um, uh, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Again, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Always use malware protection on your devices. Set up alerts about transactions on your financial accounts, and be very wary of texts, calls, and emails asking for account data or sending you links to click. Find more tips on the Nonprofit Identity Theft Resource Center. That's ID theftcenter.org. idtheftcenter.org. The brace yourself, or you probably should have already braced yourself for the increase in healthcare that have skyrocketed. Way new employer insurance options. Folks who are employees, they're really likely to see the biggest jump in what they pay for health insurance in 15 years. That means it's imperative to compare offerings during your employer's open enrollment period of time. That's including new options that may be more affordable than the plan that they're on now. More than a third of employers have introduced new types of coverage, so you can plan into 2026. Some authors have found one option with lower deductible or even none. Some firms will also be offering a high performance plan that has a more limited range of providers with lower deductibles. The plan may limit you to one or two hospitals, but still offer high quality. So you might want to check that out. Explore different levels for marketplace coverage. If you get health insurance through the Affordable Care Act marketplace, you're likely to really get slammed with all of those high increases during the open enrollment period that ran from November 1st of last year to December 15th for coverage that began this past January 1st. As has been mentioned, the increases are running, at above more than 20%. And there's been more than a 18% increase for 2026. And that's more than twice last year's 7% jump. In the past, a lot of ACA enrollees, that's Affordable Care Act enrollees, they qualified for a enhanced tax credit that capped premiums at a certain percentage of income based on the sliding scale. But that credit unfortunately expired at the end of the year, and it just did not yield to a last-minute congressional fix. So as a result of that, enrollees, they saw their premiums soar more than 100%. Wow. Premiums for bronze plans, the lowest rung of the marketplace four-tier coverage system, they'll be more affordable than popular silver plans, though the deductibles and co-pays may be higher. So you should look into Medicare changes in Medicare plan changes as well as costs. Nearly 7 out of 10 Medicare beneficiaries don't compare plan options even during their open enrollment period, which runs October 15th to December 7th. So keep those things keep those things in mind. You should look into Medicare plan changes as well as the cost. The 7 out of 10 Medicare beneficiaries don't compare plan options, even during the open enrollment period. Don't be one of those, especially this past year with costs for 2026, as you have seen, have gone up more sharply for Part B premiums. So the if you're on a Medicare Advantage drug plan, you can use the Medicare.gov Part C tool to compare drug costs and other benefits. For individual guidance and shopping for a Medicare plan, you can reach out to the to the to the address on the internet. And the address for shopping for Medicare plans is shiphelp.org. That's shiphelp.org. Appeal your Medicare surcharges. Spend down your FSAs, those are the federal savings account. About 2/3 of employers require you to use the funds in your healthcare flexible spending account by December 31st or forfeit the money. So so you might check into some of those possible savings options. Okay, folks, the taxes continue to change. So make sure that you're eligible for all these generous new tax deductions in the big one big beautiful bill that got passed last year. Take some steps to qualify for all of the expanded deductions. And of course, as I mentioned, one of the signature provisions of the one big beautiful bill was that senior tax deduction of $6,000 for singles and $12,000 for married filing joint couples. So not all of the older taxpayers qualified. The new deduction rather, phases out for single taxpayers with a modified adjusted gross income of $75,000. For joint filers, it phases out for a modified adjusted gross income of $150,000. That's for joint filers. So, and just keep in mind, and as I mentioned, the expanded state and local tax deductions. They jumped up to at $40,000 for the current tax year, compared to $10,000 last year. So if you're still working, increasing pre-tax contributions to retirement plans and health savings accounts, I think I've already mentioned that. But you can increase those contributions to the 401k all the way up to 23.5, and avoid any moves that inadvertently increase your income enough to disqualify you from the value of all of these new tax breaks. So, what are some smart steps with the time that we have left to take? For 2026, you really should take notes here, because number one, as I mentioned, is adjusting your withholding. You should recalculate your estimated tax payments also. The start of the year, as I mentioned, is also a good time to do that and reset your retirement contributions and reset your withdrawals for income tax from your regular paychecks. The I've already talked a bit about healthcare, and let's now that the 2026 tax filing season, we're well into it. Um, the IRS does expect a smooth filing season. And there may be some rough patches, caused by IRS's diminished workforce. Keep in mind the agency has lost 25% of its workers over the last 12 months. Those departures represent all experience levels and functions within IRS. And that included taxpayer services, tax collection, IT support, internet tax support, enforcement. Taxpayers and preparers will have questions on how that one big beautiful bill changes, applying a wide range of scenarios. And they're really not. It's not likely you're getting a lot of assistance from IRS, but there will be people answering the phones, and that's usually after a long wait. But getting totally complete answers to your tax inquiries is really a bit of a pipe dream. Also, look for IRS actions on your correspondence. That's going to be certainly slower than normal. For example, if you're responding to an IRS automated letter or other IRS inquiry, it's probably going to take quite a long while before you hear back from anyone at the agency. They, of course, have reassigned some employees to answer the phone lines or assist with season tasks, but that means their other duties are going to be put on hold. Some experts are saying this year's tax refunds will be bigger than in past years. And that's thanks in part to all of those new tax breaks that we've been talking about. And among them, the higher standing deduction, the $6,000 write-off for filers age 65 and older, deductions for up to $25,000, as you recall, for qualified tips, up to $12,500 for qualified overtime compensation, and up to if you do a joint return and both of you have qualified overtime pay, you can get up to $25,000 not even taxed if you're doing a joint return for both you and your wife. Up to $10,000 of interest paid on loans to buy a new car. But keep in mind, it's not one that you're leasing, but it's a car that you're actually buying. Plus the increased $40,000 limitation on deducting state and local income taxes on Schedule A. So take note of the IRS's processing of tax refunds. They certainly have phased out paper refund checks to comply with an executive order. And beginning this year, agency will pay tax refunds to individuals only by direct deposit or some other electronic method. Taxpayers who do not provide bank account information or request an exemption will face a delay in their refunds. So they're urging people without bank accounts just to go ahead and open one. Social Security Administration is offering an option of prepaid debit card to certain beneficiaries, but IRS is not yet doing this. It still appears that you can continue to pay your tax with a paper check. IRS will continue to accept those checks if you're paying for your taxes. So that is still in vogue. But they're urging everybody to use alternative methods to pay their taxes. And of course, if you pay your taxes with a paper check, uh, they're not going to deny or tear up that paper check. They certainly will continue to accept those checks that you're sending in, even if it's on paper. So the fastest way, of course, to get your tax refunds is to file early, file electronically, and request that the money be deposited directly into your bank account. And they are paying the refunds generally within 21 days of electronically filing your return. There are some common situations in which refunds can be delayed. Filing a paper return is a sure way to have that refund held up for weeks or more. Filers, if you file if you claim the earned income credit, or you claim a refundable child tax credit, you're going to have to wait for their refund, or even later, if there are complications in your tax return. Also, there's many measures to help detect tax identity theft and refund fraud. That could also cause a delay in getting your check. If you are worried about identity theft, it would be wise to apply for identity protection PIN number if you're worried about that. Okay, folks, it looks as though we have come to the close of the hour. And again, please do not forget about the ongoing support that we're generating to the local baseball team by calling Mr. and Mrs. Wooten at 951-534-3838 and send in your questions and your comments to this tax reporter. You can call him in at 951-522-9877 or send in an email at evjtaf1@gmail.com. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
All right. Hey, great job, El. And if you love the information that you're getting here each and every week, then tune in to this program, 10 a.m. on the West Coast, 1 p.m. on the East, for The World on Finance with Everett James, ladies and gentlemen. Kick back, grab that glass, and come back tonight for, let's see, what is it, Monday night? No, I'm sorry. It's Cultural Excellence tonight with yours truly playing great music, some new music, and old school classic. In other words, in the meantime, enjoy your day. And don't forget to download that app. Go to Studio W. If it's Android, Google, or Apple, Studio W. That website, as always, www.studiow.buzz.